Yes, everyone. Yes, we are here. It may be fashionably late, but we are here. Munchie, I can see Milan from Austria. It is Milan from. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the most incredible batting performance by England, I must say. Bairstow needs to be given knighthood. Is he going to be called Sir Johnny Bairstow now?
Not yet.
Not yet. No. Okay. Chris actually thinks he deserves knighthood, but I think the only people that think that Chris deserves knighthood is actually his fan club. All right. So, welcome everybody. It's Norman Koshnik here after a historic match, really, in terms of the performance of. They got 337 for 4 after 43 overs. So, how many runs could they have gotten? It's quite staggering. And I mean, certainly India batted well too, but England absolutely cruised, and it's quite an incredible result, to be really honest with you. And I think it sets up a great last match. I have the lovely Simon Wills. God.
Still half asleep.
I'm not half asleep. I'm thinking, a bigger star, Simon Wills or Willis, or I'm not sure. Okay. No, it's actually Simon Wills, and more importantly, he is the new star on the scene with these new podcasts called Fledgling Cricket coming up, which I've been flogging already. And then there's Chris Vernon. Well, he's not so great. Yeah. Chris Vernon is also here. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Good evening. Or good morning for you, Noel.
It certainly is. It's good morning for sure. where do we start with this, guys? Oh, hang on. Sorry. Something probably more important, at least to me, is this cap.
Up the rabbits.
Can you, Chris, just try and read it, please?
It says rabbits.
Rabbitohs.
Oh, sorry.
Handsomely won 26-16. In fact, they toyed with them. They were leading 22-0 at one stage, but they won the local derby between the.
So does that mean we can call the England cricket team the Rabbitohs and the Indian cricket team the Roosters then, after sort of a mirrored performance?
For today, yes, you can. The England Rabbitohs. That hasn't got a ring to it, but it'll do.
The Indian Roosters.
Well, how about neither of them? For God's sake, the Rabbitohs are the one and only Rabbitohs since 1908. Have won the most premierships, and most of my viewers, we're going to. If you show me a barrack of the Rabbitohs, you'll get free Rabbitohs merchandise. Well, at least I'll attempt to get that. All right, let's start. How much did Norm? How much more? What's the match? Okay, I saw a lot of it. Thank you very much. In fact, I didn't see a little bit of the early bits of it because I was watching my South team play, but I had my iPhone watching, and KL Rahul batted sensationally. And at that stage, looked like the 336 for 6 they got looked insurmountable, to be honest with you. And did you guys think that way as well?
I'm actually going to take a slightly different take on this. I think that both games have shown.
Can you answer my question? When they were 336 for 6, did you think England had a serious chance of getting the score?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Because I think that they would have chased the first game if they hadn't completely blown up. And it's clear that India's tactic is. I'm not saying that it was an easy chase. I'm saying that England would have fancied their chances because in the first game they threatened to do it comfortably as well, and they just blew up. And it's clear that India's tactic of basically milk it and push it around and leave it to the middle order is a risky one. You look at the strike rates of the guys today. KL Rahul got a brilliant 100. Cody got 60 off 70 balls. It's quite clear that that's a very flat wicket, and that 330 is probably a par sort of score, and that's the way that the game is at the moment. Moeen Ali went for 1 boundary in his 10 overs. The 2 spinners for India bowled 16 overs for 160 and went for 1-4 each, but 18 sixes or something. That's the difference. I think the 2 English spinners went 20 overs for 119. So it just looks that, hence why England are quite happy chasing, I think, is because they know that India's tactic is to have a look and to set up a score. And each power play now, I think England were 50 runs ahead after both power plays, and it's quite a difficult one to claw back, knowing that the bowling that India have at the moment. So I'm not saying England were favourites to chase it, but I don't think that they would have thought that was unsurmountable by any stretch. And as I said, they threatened to do it in the first game. So
did you say unsurmountable? Insurmountable.
Unsurmountable is the word, is it? Maybe not.
But you'd always say 336 is still a lot of runs to get.
So, sure.
Scoreboard pressure. That's what India are looking to do is put a score on the board but wow, Roy and Bairstow again. It took a misunderstanding to break them up. That opening partnership really is really doing England proud over a long period of time now. But it was great, for me to see Stokes back playing the way we know he can play. That was outstanding ball striking. But again, I think Owen Morgan deserves a lot of credit, because after that last one-day international, when he was interviewed, he didn't question their process. He said, "This is the way we play, and we're going to keep doing it." And that gives you as a player a lot of confidence, to know that you can just go out there next game and keep going and keep going. And they believe in this method. And they're taking white ball cricket to a different level around the world at the moment. So great to see, really good to see.
It's ironic how Butler as captain failed in the batting lineup. Owen Morgan didn't exactly do that well either as captain. I'm being cheeky, but it's
and he dropped 2 catches today as well. Butler, he didn't have his best day with either gloves or bat. So it's just that extra pressure of being a leader. Definitely takes its toll.
And an element of selflessness as well, because he doesn't have a concern about his own wicket. He's more driven towards the team's victory. Milan and Livingston, I mean, you could argue cameos, but they did very well, didn't they? They did particularly well.
Yeah, I think that showed how good the pitch was. For someone like Livingston coming in his first game to play as freely as he did, because there was a few wickets fell before that point. Told you that the wicket was decent.
It also shows the mindset that's been drilled into not just, it's easy for Bairstow, Roy and Stokes to go out with a carefree attitude, but for a guy to come in on debut after 3 quick wickets, and I think third ball ran down the wicket to Kumar and stuck him over his head for 6. It just shows that these boys have and it's the same in the Indian side, when Kishan and Yadav came in the T20s, they just don't fear getting out. That guy was on debut in potentially quite a sticky situation if he'd gotten out, but made it look like he'd played 30 or 40 games. So, no, he's another good guy, another guy that they're really keen to get involved. So, and I feel a bit sorry for Billings. He's potentially now lost his slot, because it would be pretty hard to drop Livingston, I think, for the last game.
But it's funny how luck favours players, regardless whether it's injury or not. There's an element of luck. We have to accept that, don't we? Sam Billings, I know that he didn't get much opportunity to do anything, but he didn't appear to be settled. Even in that small time he was on the field, there's something, I don't know, the way in which he feels that ball when he was injured, the way he approached that fielding was also a concern to me. I know he was injured, which is pure bad luck, but you can actually create. If you have a certain technique, a good fielding technique, you in a lot of cases can avoid injury. Am I right?
We disagreed with that, didn't we, the other day? Yeah.
Yeah, we did. But I did mention it.
All I'd say is that sometimes Sam can go. He can go at it 100%. He wants to do well. He's a huge team man, and sometimes he can just go at it too hard. Sometimes, so probably unfortunate. He did it only a couple of years ago when he landed on the shoulder and dislocated it down at Glamorgan early in the game as well. Disappointing for him. And now Livingston's come in and played the role that he's played. That puts him under even more pressure, because they're definitely looking for that player, who can hit the boundaries at the back end of the game.
So is Billings out of the whole series due to injury, or was it just this game?
Just this game.
game by game. I think he was hopeful, looking at his social media, to be right for the next one. So
the thing is, I think that leans me. I know that he's done well, Billings, but Livingston can bowl quite well as well. Like he's quite a useful. When the proverbial hits the fan, if Pant gets going, Livingston's opened the bowling spin, and to have a number 6 that's, it strings to your bow, isn't it? England don't need the keeper, the third choice keeper, whereas if Livingston occasionally can bowl 4 or 5 overs quite quietly, or even maybe open the bowling, they've used it before in a T20. If the batting is on par, which, I know obviously I like Sam and Wilco's the same, but I would say that Livingston's probably got a better pedigree in the white ball game, county-wise. Obviously, international-wise, he's not played as much, but it might just favour Livingston to have a go at it. And especially if he's come in and done well, it might be quite hard to get the shirt back, as it were. So
I think that the key thing you mentioned there is he can bowl. So, particularly if they go in with one spinner in Rashid, like they did in the first one-day international, it definitely gives them an option to play him as the batter and fiddle a few overs if they need to. So, I like Livingston. I saw him in Sri Lanka play for the England Lions against us, and he looked the best player there by a long way. I think he's a good addition to the squad for sure as a cricketer.
And I mean, he also had current form with the BBL as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was pretty significant. I think really a lot of Australians haven't really taken notice of him until the series. They made the final, and his efforts were notable. And I think that put him in good stead as well.
It's also not if he doesn't play for England in this series completely and sits on the bench. I know he's got an IPL franchise. He might not have. He goes out in this game or next game and gets a quick 30 or quick 40 or takes a couple of wickets. All of a sudden, he's playing in the first game in the IPL because they've seen him and think, actually, we've seen this guy against some of our boys now. This guy can really play. It might just a couple of cameos in these games might actually set him up for a proper starring role in an IPL side as maybe a rotational side. So
I'll tell you what, though, the one thing it did identify for me was how both sides miss their key bowlers. So, bowlers that can bowl 90 miles an hour or have outstanding skill, like, these other bowlers, the bench players, as we call them, there's one or two that might come out this series and never play for their country again.
Well, I mean, Bhuvi Kumar, he bowled so well in the previous match, but this match, as you said, Livingston took hold of him in the first delivery. He didn't look he looked generally early on. He was bowling very well, wasn't he? He seemed to be going quite steadily.
I don't know. I think that on that wicket, from what we've seen, 10 overs, 1 for 60. You've not done. You bowled 5 overs in the power play at the best opening partnership in the world by comfortably at the moment. I think 10 overs, 1 or 2 for 60. Because Krishna did the same, and I'm impressed with him. I think he looks a prospect. He's still a bit rough around the edges, but he's certainly going to improve. I think that's quite a good return. For a seamer bowling half his spell in the power play and half at the death, I don't think 6 and over. I think that's a pretty decent result. And he's a guy that they've got to get him back in that test side, because I guarantee that if he's bowling well, coming over to England with that Duke's ball, he's going to he's got potential to take more wickets than a Bumrah or a Sharma because of his skill swinging it both ways. And what England's plan of attack in that series will be Anderson, Wokes, Broad, Curran, swing bowlers, and Bhuvi's got to be India's best swing bowler. So I assume they're going to want to get him back in the test side as well.
Well, one of the comments from Ismooks was given the pitch is going to be the same, they need to play 5 fast bowlers. Can't be worse than 2 spinners in the first 2 games. Maybe it's extreme.
I think it's just quality spin. I said in the first game, I said I don't think Mr. Krunel is a great bowler. Yadav is clearly just all over the place confidence-wise. I mean, I think Emily Rainford Brent just said he just got to bowl quicker, and it's like, but with your action and how you release it, if he tries to bowl quicker, he could just drag it down. And I think that India just missed the trick.
Not necessarily Perez's trajectory. It was very noticeable that it was up and down, which for someone like Stokes, you throw it up and he's going to keep coming at you. So it's more trajectory than pace. You know, you can bowl it slow, but you can't bowl it up, and that was his biggest thing. He did look a bowler lacking confidence, and probably backs up the reason why they didn't play him in the Test series as much as we thought he would. Just this white ball game can really expose you. You know, Tom Curran at the moment, he must be thinking, geez, what do I have to do here? Because he can't take a wicket. You know, he's trying everything. Unfortunately, at his pace, you have to be right on the money with his skill. And he's just out with his skill, and he's going out the park. So it's a tough time.
That has to be somewhat of a down on the England side, is Tom Curran's performance. Even though they've won the match handsomely due to their batting, is Tom Curran going to be the next match?
Well, I think that Topley impressed. I think that left armers have always done well in India. They were talking about it earlier, but a left armour that can swing it is an asset in any form of cricket, whether it's Kent League cricket on a Saturday to Test match opening bowling. And, you know, I think that they're possibly battling out for one slot. So I would assume that you might see Wood come in for Tom Curran for the last game, but they do seem to like him. You know, the one thing that you can't say is that they haven't backed him, and they don't. You know, Stokes only bowled 4 overs today. Sam Curran bowled 7 overs. I think Tom Curran bowled the last 5 overs from one end. So it's not like they're not backing him, but
I think that's the reason, is they haven't got a luxury of bowlers to bowl at the death, and that's the one
Stokes
thing.
Done it a lot, hasn't he? They don't seem to like bowling. He bowled 8 overs the other day.
He's not. I don't think Stokes is bowling at his best at the moment. You know, he since that South African series, when he changed, you know, the Test match running all day, he just doesn't seem to have the same impact. You know, it's just something's not quite right with his bowling at the moment. But you know,
but despite that, he got 3 wickets in the previous performance that he played.
Yeah, he just doesn't. You know, Stokes used to bowl a heavy ball. You know, he's one of those bowlers that would run in and he'd hit the bat hard. At the moment, it doesn't look to be as much behind it, would be my observation. So I don't know.
Really, I'm intrigued you're saying that, because I mean, I'm not an expert on bowling necessarily, but I thought he was still bowling quite well.
He bowled on the last test as well, didn't he?
But not as consistent as his ability.
Okay.
You know, this guy is up there with the best of all time.
And there's no doubt about that.
You know, and today we seen his batting, so that's great. But Ben Stokes at his best is performing with both. So,
do you think that's just down to the conditions and the you know, we've played in India for 2 months? You know, do you think that it's just maybe slightly slower wickets? You know, he'll get back to England in the summer, and he'll have that zip back. You know,
who knows, mate? Who knows? You know, it might. You just don't know. You know, he might be struggling with a bio bubble. You just don't know, and that's why you just got to give him a bit of space sometimes, and he'll come good again. There's no doubt about it. But he just, you know, for me, you know, you think in that World 2020, I know it didn't go well for him, but he was bowling the last over of the World Cup final. So he was always someone that you could throw the ball to at the death. Now you're looking at not a lot. You know, you really want 3 bowlers that you can have bowling at the death. Because if one disappears, you've still got the other 2 up your sleeve. Now England are struggling to find that,
especially with their number 1 pick sat at home with a bad elbow or bad shoulder. So.
I was going to get to that before today's match. It was obvious they were missing Joe Root immensely, and I would argue could well have been the captain had he been available. In fact, if he was in the touring squad and got brought into the side, if he wasn't in the side, would he have captained today over Josh Butler?
No.
Okay.
I think that we spoke the other day, and you know, you and Preeti said about 3-0 and that England looked done, and I sort of sat here and, you know, I said that this is one game. You know, the reason Morgan has come out and said this is because these boys are a serious side, and the problem I think is that if England bat first, and I know that it's their target is to chase, if England bat like that for 50 overs batting first, they'll get 400. Like, because I don't think that Indian bowling lineup can stop them. And with Hardik Pandya clearly injured or clearly not up to bowling at the moment, they have a real problem because he would have had to have bowled Krunal 10 overs today. He had to have bowled Thakur and Yadav 10 overs. And Hardik, we said in the 2020 side, if he doesn't bowl, that chucks the balance of that side out immensely. And it gives Kohli a real headache. And if England bat first in that last game and they get going, and let's face it, they're all in good form, that top three, they could rack up a huge score on that wicket.
I don't reckon it'll be flat. I don't reckon it'll be flat.
Why didn't Hardik Pandya bowl today?
He's clearly injured. He's clearly something wrong. He's clearly not fully fit, because why wouldn't he have bowled?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, it was exposed enough that he should have bowled. You're right. Moeen Ali's performance with the ball, he's 10 overs and 47. That was very good. Economy rate was sensational.
I watched it, and I don't know if you watched it or Wilco. I don't think he bowled that well. I thought he bowled okay. It just looked like India were happy just to knock him round. And I think that on another day, they'll look back and say, gee, we should have just gone after him. Because if, look at the first game, he bowled 3 overs to 30 and England was struggling. Whereas today, I think both spinners bowled 10 off the reel each. I think it was 20 overs straight through for both of them. So for 20 overs in that middle period, India just let them knock it about. I think that they bowled 10 consecutively each in tandem. And it just let, as I said, Moeen Ali went for 1 boundary, and I think that was in his 8th over. And bear in mind, his whole spell would have been at Rahul and Kohli, who are both in set. It's surely there's got to be more intent from India to get after him, because, arguably they'll look back and say, well, we were 30, 40 runs light there, because the wicket and how they played our spin would suggest that Moeen Ali shouldn't have been bowling 10 overs for 50.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So Johnny Bairstow was player of the match, as we see. How close was Ben Stokes to being player of the match?
Yeah, I mean, probably quite close. But, I think that Bairstow just is immense at the moment, isn't he? And he's, without him and Roy setting up that platform for Stokes to come in, he probably doesn't do that as much. It's a lot harder to do it. So the guy, I think his last 3 scores in international cricket are 100, 94, 100 Bairstow. The guy's in. It's amazing what confidence does, isn't it? It goes out in the test match and literally looks like he's batting with a snooker cue, and then goes out. Obviously, it's an easier, flatter wicket, different ball, but the confidence, that just body language confidence, is just immense, isn't it? And it's amazing how much it makes a difference.
But it is amazing, and I know it's different formats, but in his Test career, what we saw, he looked like he was like a deer in front of headlights when he batted, getting out very quickly. We're relatively damning him at that point. I mean, people were damning it. I know this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know if Chris saw it last night, but Kevin Peterson was on the cricket show on Sky, and he spoke a lot about England's preparation against spin. And he was very critical that Johnny Bairstow was underprepared for that Test series, because he said the last time they were out there together, him, Bairstow and Root were out in the nets, and there was a specific drill and technique that they use, which is pretty common knowledge in the UK. And I'm just amazed that wasn't used this time. But I'm sure if it was the other way around, if Johnny had the white ball series first and then transferred into the red ball, it'd be a different character. There would have definitely been doubts at the back of his mind because of his, that's the way he is. He runs is his confidence, like any player. And KP says he's one of the best players of spin in the country. So, he's played with the guy. He knows how good he is. So,
okay. Now, I know this. I always, when I look at the England side, they've done fantastically well. They deserved their victory. It was stupendous. They're one of the best, if not the best, short form version of the game as a team. But I keep seeing a side with a number of keepers in the team, and it never sits well with me. What's your thoughts?
India have got the same, haven't they? You know, Pant
yes, and I'm
Kale.
not just counting India here as well. I think we talked about this earlier on in a previous. I think it was in the T20 series we mentioned, even in the Test game. The fact the number of keepers in a side still doesn't sit well with me. I don't know why I'm so annoyed by it, but I just find it difficult to see a side that has a number of keepers in there.
But I think the problem is that where your point, I'll argue your point, is that Johnny Bairstow, if he wasn't a keeper and never picked up a pair of gloves in his life, he would still be probably the best opening bat in the world at the moment. You know, he's not. He's there purely for batting. You know, he could. So Billings is obviously a keeper.
The big thing about England now, or world cricket, is that generally you're looking at their batting first and their glove work second. So it's not like it used to be where they're a gloveman, and if they average 30, you're happy. Now, you know, from a talent ID point of view, you're looking at, can this guy average 40 in international cricket, 40 plus, and then obviously the glove work is second. You know, and England have got lots of them. You know, they've got lots of them. There's still a few others who could be banging on the door realistically as well in county cricket at the moment, because, you know, it's the strength of our system.
So as a wicket keeper yourself, Simon, does that sit well with you?
Well, I wish I played in this era, because it was more my type of cricket. You know, I wasn't a wicket keeper. I was a stopper. There was far better glovemen out there than me. The fact was, are you
being humble when you say that?
No, I'm being honest. I was very late into wicket keeping, and the only reason I did it was because my dad was a decent keeper, and the team was short one day, and they said, "Oh, well, here's the gloves for you." So that's how I got into it. So I'm always a batter growing up, and yeah, I was probably
6'7" as well. You know, you wouldn't have thought he was a keeper.
I've got a few, yeah. I've got a few wickets as well, but no, it's you know, this the way the game is at the moment. It's just fantastic to watch, isn't it? You know, you just listen to the commentators, and they're proper players. The commentators nowadays, you know, they play international cricket at a high level, and they're just amazed at what these guys can do. And you know, it's just.
Is it wrong of me to say that, though? Is it wrong of me to have that feeling? Do you not have that feeling yourself, or are you?
I don't know what the problem is, though. I don't know what
not at all. Not at all.
It. Why do you have a problem?
Because from a coaching point of view, you know, at Kent we had plenty. In fact, I think we produced 7 international keepers, male and female, under 19 or above in 15 years. And so we had to accommodate them. So we were always, you know, do your glove work, but then go and do your fielding work. And, you know, so we were accommodating them more than anything.
So the generations that are coming through have watched an Adam Gilchrist, for example, or perhaps
definitely
Kara.
Yeah, Gilchrist changed the game. As soon as Gilchrist came into that Australian side, you know, and played as an all-rounder, which gives you better balance, because everyone always tried to find the fast bowling all-rounder that they could never find after Botham in this country. Kapil Dev in India, Richard Hadley in New Zealand, they were few and far between. So Gilchrist then made everybody aware that actually the wicketkeeper could be our all-rounder that gives us better balance and allows us to play an extra bowler or an extra batter depending on conditions. So, yeah, we've got to give you some credit there, Norm.
And I'm probably, you know, being as ripe in age as I am, to me, I may have been the last people to be affected by someone prior to an Adam Gilchrist. Like, to me, Rod Marsh, even though Rod Marsh was a great batter, but he was still a keeper first.
Absolutely. You know, well, you go back to that era. Obviously, Alan Knott was the key keeper batter, you know, on uncovered pitches. So averages don't really reflect how good a batter he was. But then you had someone like Bob Taylor, who was an outstanding gloveman and batted 10 and 11 for his county side. So just shows how the game's evolved and how it's moved on. And you've got to bat top 6 now as a keeper, definitely.
Yep. Okay. So Anuj Ingle saying, sure, Surrey, Dubé, where are your bloody selectors? So they're implying that Shaw should be in the side. Pretty sure, I'm assuming. So the reality is he has been knocking on the door yet again with his domestic cricket.
Yep.
Hasn't he?
I have a problem with the, we were sat here 3 days ago after India had won, and everyone was like, this is the greatest batting lineup. They've wiped the floor of this England side, keep them in, they're doing brilliantly. Carroll's back in, and England go and beat them in one game, and now everyone's heads is on the line. I find it, Sky Yadav looks a great find, but he's 30 years old and hasn't played for India before. There's a reason why they haven't picked him in the white ball stuff before the first class stuff, because they feel that there are better options. So, he might come in and do well, but to say he's the saviour and to kick out a KL Rahul or a Virat Kohli or someone who's been there, done it. Darwan, Kohli, and Sharma have 27,000 international one-day runs between them or something. It's just it's impossible to say how these guys have been there, seen it, done it, got the t-shirt and got it twice. They're not a bad side because the best white ball side in the world beat them today. It's crazy to sit here starting calling from heads, especially on the batting.
I think it's the bowling side of things. I think the spin is getting exposed big time, and those backup seamers. There's one or two are okay, but the depth is exposed. So they're probably looking at 3 bowlers. I'd say 3 bowlers. The batting lineup will take care of itself. They're world class cricketers, those guys. So for me, it's the bowling attack that's their weakness at the moment.
But I think it's particularly important, not only this match, but for the last match, which will be coming up on Sunday, for England to do really well and put in a great effort, win or lose, because that's the crescendo when they leave the country and how they feel on the performance. And England overall have a pretty good pass mark on the series, even though they've been beaten in both the Test and the T20 series. They've got a pretty good pass mark on the series. I'm going way back to the beginning when Chris and I talked. As they won the first Test match, they won 2 out of the 5 T20 matches. England have got a very good pass mark on their efforts in this series, haven't they? The overall tour.
Definitely. And when you take on board the bio bubble that they've been in, going back to most of the year, mentally for these guys, it's been a huge challenge. So, no, there'll be lots of positives coming out of it. They'll tweak a couple of things for sure. I just have a funny feeling it won't be a flat wicket, the last one. I think there'll be a little bit in it to try to take England's destructive hitting out of it.
The problem is, Wilco, is that if they're going to produce a wicket that spins, our spinners are better than India's. Not with that, unless they bring Jadeja and Ashwin in, which they're not. Sundar might come in.
Yeah.
But Mo and Ali and Rashid are streets ahead of Pandya and Yadav.
I'm not saying they're not, but at least they'll find out a little bit more about these 2 spinners on a spinning pitch. If they get smashed on a spinning pitch, then it gives the selectors an easier decision to make. Other than just playing on a flat one. That's only my view. I could be totally.
I think the problem is for Yadav, and when he's bowled well before, is that with a spinner, like an attacking spinner like that, you need a guy at the other end like a Jadeja who's bowling 10 overs to 30, and they have to then go after Yadav at the other end to try and score runs. So he's going to pick up wickets. When Pandya's going at 19 and over at the other end like he was today, the batsmen just see up there. They're full of confidence on a small ground and go wicket and just keep going. Like if you're going to have an aggressive, which Yadav and Shalal are, they're aggressive wicket-taking leg spinners. You've got to have control at the other end, and they just don't seem to have that at the moment. And even like Thakur, and I saw a comment from someone. Where was it? Gautam Avula. Good evening. Haven't seen you before. He said for the first time the Indians looked like ran out of all ideas. I disagree. The first one day, England threatened to do this in 15 overs. They were 140 for naught. They did it, and India looked ragged. England blew up. England should have cruised that first one there as well. So, and it's not like England's tactics they're not going in with any mystery what they're going to do. India know that England will come out from ball 1, 2 or 3 overs will have a look, and then they're just going to tee off. that's the plan. They're going to take spinners on, and they're just going to keep going. So it's not
So
like
England were 110 after 16 overs when they lost their first wicket. Now that run rate was better than the previous match, though, was it not?
But they were 60. They were 59 off 10, and I think they were 30 off 6. So I think I was watching it with Dad, and I said you can just tell that England are going to start putting the foot, and I think Bairstow hit 20 off or 18 off and over, and you could just tell that things were going, and then they just put the foot down from there. But they're not masking this. India can't come out and say they're surprised that this is what England are doing. They know exactly what's coming, and as soon as the spinners come on, they're going to go at it. So India have got
where do we see Kohli as a captain?
So, say that again. Where do we see
Kohli as a captain? Would we rate him as a good captain, a great captain, an average captain? Because he's obviously got some great players in that side, and he's had great players when he's captained RCB. You know, there are times I'm sitting watching the game, and you just think. You know, Chris messaged me at one stage today when England lost a couple of wickets, and you know he changed the wicket taking bowler and brought the spinners on, and you kind of questioning why are you doing that? You know, you've got to take wickets to win this game, so why don't you just keep going? And he allowed England to come back into the game, and that's not the first time. You know, he doesn't bowl certain bowlers at all. Not let alone 1 or 2 overs. He just doesn't bowl them at all. You know, I question how good a captain he is in white ball cricket.
So the T20 series, the last match of the T20 series, when he took it by the scruff of the neck and batted the way they did, and they won that match, they were lauding over his captaincy because he led by example.
He's an outstanding player, but what I'm saying is his tactical decisions and his ability to get the best out of his team. Now, there's no doubt Morgan does that.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, when you watch Morgan's team, they just are flying. Even when they lose, it's not like it's the end of the world. Whereas sometimes the Indian team, when they lose, it's like, oh, who's going to get it in the neck? Who's he going to blame for today?
You get the impression that when Yardav's bowling and they pan out, you get the impression if I was bowling and I'd just been whacked, that as a bowler you would be there thinking, I can feel his eyes staring into the back of my head, you know, giving me a glare, or you know, I don't get that impression with Owen Morgan. I get the impression that if Tom Curran goes for 20 in and over, he goes, "Come on, mate, you got the next one." Whereas I think with Kohli, you sometimes think, "Geez, he's going to shout the house down at me here," and you know, I don't know. As I said, I text Wilco. Kumar took a wicket, got Stokes out. Next over, Krishna got 2 wickets. And England were 50 to win, 4 down. He took Kumar off and brought Yardav on. And then the same time at the other end, took Krishna off and brought Krunal on. Took them both off, who'd just taken 3 wickets for 2 runs. And all of a sudden, Livingston went 1, 2. Milan went 2, 2, 1. And all of a sudden, we had 15 runs off 2 overs. And the pressure's gone. And you just think that they were never going to...
He brought the spinners back on. He kept the field out for the new batters. It wasn't like he brought the field in and said, right, okay, we're not going to give you any easy runs here. You're going to have to take a chance. But he didn't do that. So I just wonder, you know, it's not going to change. It's not going to change in the short term until the 2020 World Cup. But you just wonder sometimes. It's been very noticeable when he hasn't been captain, how the team has played.
Well, you can bring it back to the Test series as well, can't you?
Yes,
Australia.
Absolutely.
And I'll be honest with you, I have had a similar thought to you, Simon. I do remember Chris making it quite clear it's just not going to happen. You were quite emphatic about that in an earlier discussion about Kohli captaincy.
Absolutely.
I would argue Rahane is a better captain in the pure sense of the word, but he won't get that job out of Kohli.
Rahane's place in that side is under massive scrutiny. You know, Rahane's slot, Kohli is probably the only one in that top 6 going to England. Who else? Pujara will be there. You know, and Sharma will be there. But I wouldn't say that Pujara and Sharma are nailed on to do well in England. Kohli is the only one with 100% certainty that you will say will play all 5 tests in England. without a doubt. I think Pujara is probably the only other one, but he's not going to captain. So Rahane clearly did a good job, but they were talking about him getting dropped. So you can't chuck the captaincy to a bloke that arguably a lot of Indians wouldn't even have in their side. So, but there's all. I know the captain gets the best.
I suppose where I'm coming from is when England lose, I know Morgan will be looking at himself and saying, what could I have done better as a captain today? I'm not always convinced, and Kohli's interview at the end didn't convince me either, that he would be saying that. He's pointing the fingers at others saying, you let us down, which, you don't do that as a captain.
But isn't that typical of somebody who is a leader by example when he's batting, who tends to dominate a team and generally does very well, that he has this air of it's my way or the highway? I'm afraid that happens.
But that's not a good captaincy.
No,
you're leading by fear, which that never works.
I wish I could replay a tape I had earlier in the series, even test series, and I was saying something similar, and I even put out comments to say whether Kohli should be captain on my. You saw that, Chris, and I got trounced by people about the fact that I had even doubted Kohli's. Well, I didn't so much doubt, but I gave that question out to the public. What do you think if Kohli wasn't captain? You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, I'm afraid. I think if Kohli's career as it pans out, as he gets closer and closer to an end, if he's a good player, if he's a clever person, he'll actually allow the captaincy to not be his at some stage, to allow his own career to continue when he's batting. That's my impression.
The only real answer to this is once he isn't captain and still playing the game.
Yeah.
Because then we'll really know whether his captaincy affected the talent in the team, or whether we were wrong.
He's in a very sorry, Walker.
No, carry on.
I think he's in a very privileged position that his captaincy, with his home conditions and his test sides and the sides coming, I reckon, and I'm going to say this with tongue in cheek slightly, I could go out there and captain India on the field in a test match, and I'll just bowl Ashwin and Axar Patel all day, and I reckon that on the field would probably win the test. I think that he's got a very easy role as captain that test side at home, because they're just going to demolish everyone with the spinners that they've got. So away from home, it comes under a bit more scrutiny, and he's got a huge population, an unbelievable talent pool, and it's people talk about Ricky Ponting. Was Ricky Ponting an unbelievable captain, or was he a good captain because he had Hayden, Langer, himself, Warren, McGrath, Lee, Gillespie, Gilchrist? I think that you see good captains like Morgan, who basically dragged a side 8th in the world and turned them into a World Cup winning side. I think that Ricky Ponting captained the best side ever, and they were just a good cricket team and just demolished everyone. And I think that you see more. It's easy to captain a good winning side, and I think you see more when the chips are down. And do you see Kohli dragging it out of the doldrums, as it were, whereas Rahane did it? And I guess it was easy to do it in Australia just because they're expected to get demolished. Whereas, how will India go under Kohli's captaincy if they're 2-0 down against England this summer in the Test series? Which that's when you see how a leader rallies his troops. And look what Morgan's done clearly in the changing room after this first game. They collapsed, and they've clearly gone in. He said in an interview, we won't change. He said, I'd rather lose a game by 80 runs playing like this than 20 runs changing our strategy. And he said, the boys will go out and they'll do exactly the same, and we'll back ourselves to win. And you can just see that confidence that even someone like Livingston, as we said, he went out, it looked like he played 100 games and just knocked it off. And it's clear that Morgan would take a bullet for every single one of his team, I have no doubt. Whereas, as Wilco said, could you see Kohli taking the rap for Kuldeep bowling a rubbish spell? You kind of don't get that impression.
So, okay, two things on that. Okay, firstly, back to Ricky Ponting. He acknowledged himself that he wasn't the best captain in the world, let's argue, because he actually relinquished his captaincy towards the end of his Test career, correct? He gave Clark the chance to nurture him, which is a great sign of somebody who acknowledges that there are people coming along after him that need to be acknowledged that way. Ponting would never say he was better than an Alan Border or a Mark Taylor or the like as well. So in fairness to Ricky Ponting, he never saw himself as being...
No, but he will always be considered as one of the best just because of his record as captain. I think if you said to anyone who are the best Test captains of the last 30 years, they would always say, because of his record, Ricky Ponting would be in the conversation, wouldn't he? And I think
actually, Australians would say Border won war possibly second along with Mark Taylor before they would say Ponting. So I would argue he's not as highly regarded as a captain as you might think, as a player certainly. The other thing, you've talked about Morgan's comparison to the captaincy of Virat Kohli. We're forgetting Joe Root, aren't you, in that conversation? Because Joe Root would be argued as a better captain than Morgan.
Not for what the impact they've had on their respective sides. As I said, England got demolished in that World Cup. They got bowled out they lost to Bangladesh. They got bowled out by New Zealand for 80. They literally were a laughing stock in this country as well. And Morgan took over the captaincy. Was it from Cook or was it from Root? Or it might have even been from Root. And he's literally turned that into a Goliath in the white ball game and has dragged the side from the doldrums to World Cup winners in 4 years, and did it quickly. And no, Joe Root's come in and is probably going to be England's most successful ever Test captain, but hasn't quite achieved world domination purely. And it's harder to do it in Test cricket. Like, I completely get that. And I don't think you're ever going to look at no side in the world in the last 20, 30 years has really done it in Test cricket to that extent. So different challenges, but he's clearly had an impact, Joe Root, but I don't think you can say, I think Morgan has had more impact.
Joe Root's improved captain. There's no doubt he's improved. When he first started, he looked like a little boy, in his press conferences, but now he speaks really, really well with confidence, and it looks like it's his team. Whereas when he took over, it was probably more the coach's team or the previous captain's team. So, but I agree with Chris. I think, Owen Morgan is the, best captain in the world. There's no doubt about it with what he's done.
There are many blokes that go into an IPL franchise and get picked as an overseas, get picked as captain. There's a couple. And it's not like some of them sort of inherit it during a season because there's an injury or because someone's out of form. But Morgan's been picked as you're staying as captain. And I think that's testament to how much respect he has. And he's probably one of England's, I don't know what Wilco's view is on this, in terms of our batting lineup, he's probably our most inconsistent performer. I'm saying he scores runs, but he's certainly not consistently churning them out like a Root or a Roy or a Bairstow. He's more of an impact guy down the order, but he's just invaluable. And, India will say this series, well, they've got 2 or 3 of their key players out. Well, England are missing Archer, Root and Morgan now. They're probably the 3 of the most influential blokes that are sat in this country watching now. So,
okay, about captaincy for a moment, and this is an observation I'm making from what you're saying and in general. When a player is the best batter in the team or the most outstanding batter in the team, they become often by default the captain, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's acknowledged that the best batter in the side ends up being the captain. And hence you have a captain like Virat Kohli who is dominant, my way or the highway. Then you have a person like Rahane, Morgan, who are not the best batter of the team, but are a much better captain. And that seems to be the trait of these 2 types of captaincies. And we're always going to have this question of whether when a player is the best batter and he has this dominance of the batting and can often be seen as beyond reproach, that we're going to have these questions about his captaincy. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I do think it is. It's because you're the best player. There's an expectation that you're going to be a good captain, but that's not always the case. And I think the examples that you've given is probably because they're not the best player. They can relate the tough times. They can come down to a player who's struggling a little bit, whereas when you're the top player, you don't have that very often. So you can't relate to it. It's like, I remember when Glenn Hoddle was manager, they said, the players said that he would come on and couldn't quite understand why they couldn't do what he did, and he would put the ball down and put it in the top corner and say, well, that's how easy it is. But unfortunately, as a coach, you've got to flex your style to meet the players' needs. And, that's what the good captains do. They can see it from other people's perspectives.
But I do think Coley has improved that aspect of his game. There's evidence to me that he is listening to that. He's not as arguably pig-headed as you might think he could be. I think he is improving as a captain, and the level of how humble he is and not being that way. There are moments when it spits out, like we're saying perhaps today, but I would argue he has gotten better that way. And as you can see from the commentary, the moment we mention Coley's captaincy, the comments become quite derisive, don't they? They really do. And there's a lot of Indians who are so-called Coley haters as a captain in particular, and others that lord over him. It's a very difficult topic.
It's interesting because Sankit Jay's on there saying, how are we comparing Virat Kohli with Owen Morgan? Well, very simple. Owen Morgan's record is better as a captain in white ball cricket.
Batting-wise, we're not comparing them as players.
Purely captaincy. And, not just, if you looked at the IPL as well, probably when Owen Morgan took over, he turned that team around because they were in a nightmare situation. So yeah, I think it's fair what we're talking about.
I think that Kohli's always going to get an easy ride with the players he's got in his side. You've got
after Kohli's reign where they go, because obviously there's a lot of older players in the team. They might go for someone a little bit younger to take over the reins. Be really interesting to see.
If I'm being really honest with you, I totally agree with you. But I know the reality is different in terms of selections of Virat Kohli. He'll be
imagine the storm it would brew up if what Indian selector or what Indian board member or whoever the think tank is, what person is going to be brave enough to put their hand up and say, I think we should replace Kohli as captain?
Suraj Ganguly.
But you think he would have to have.
He wouldn't shy Suraj, trust me. If he thinks it's the right decision for Indian cricket, he'd do it. But I don't think it will happen. Like Norm said, I think he's got to the end of the T20 World Cup, and if they don't win it, then it'll be time for someone else to take over the reins.
Is that other person to take over the reins Rohit Sharma?
Well, that was my question. Is he too old at that stage, or do they go for someone younger, or do they give it to Rohit for a short-term period through to the 50-over World Cup? Who knows?
Well, I mean, his captaincy for the Mumbai Indians is seen as
absolutely
legendary, honestly, because as you said, Chris, his personal performance haven't been that strong in the IPL, have they? But that's because he may be seeing his captaincy come to the fore, and he's happy to not be the leader by his bat, which is a sign of, ironically, a good captain.
I can't see Kohli not being captain at the 2023 World Cup. I don't see it not happening. He's going to come under probably more pressure, I think, for the Test captaincy this year. He's going to, he's ticked one box in India, but then again, he wasn't there in Australia, sorry. And he's got probably for India, and I mean this in the greatest respect to Australia conditions-wise, England is by far a harder tour than Australia is for India. And we've got to play New Zealand here and us in a 5-match series. And, as I said, it's easy for India because I think his bowling will probably save them. I think England will win, and because I think that his batting is better in these conditions. But I think he's going to have Bumrah, Bhuvi, Sharma, and Siraj who are probably going to dig him out of trouble in at least one test and keep England's batting at bay. But if they don't bowl very well, or both Joe Root and Ben Stokes turn up and have the best series of their life, it could be a long summer.
What's going to happen during the IPL, do you? They play a lot of cricket, and injuries could impact, and they could come in with a totally different bowling attack. God forbid, because you want to see those best players playing in all conditions. But they've got a lot of cricket to come in the next few months.
Would we have had this conversation about Virat Kohli had, say, England crumbled towards their innings today and India won yet again?
Oh, look, we probably
We've
wouldn't.
had this conversation before, Norman, haven't we?
Yeah.
It's not the
We
first
No,
time.
no, I'm not.
Right.
Don't take it
In
personally,
the
Chris. I'm not
background.
going to go at you. I'm talking generally.
No, I'm saying in general, it's not the first time we've spoken about it. And I'm
No,
one
I
of
know
the
that.
first people to say it's easy to jump the gun. As I sat here the other day when I read the comments and, oh, England will lose 3-0. They've got, they're done, they're dusted. And I'm sat here thinking, this side is the number one side in the world and is a complete, the first one dayer, if you take out 10 overs at the end when India whacked it and 10 overs in the middle, England were on top for comfortably half of that game. I know that India won quite comfortably, but England controlled 35 overs of the bowling and then half of our batting innings. It basically lost it in 2 10-over key periods in both innings. So, England, it's easy to get carried away, and I think India, you can't get carried away because you've got 330 twice and you've lost one, you've won one. Like, there's clearly not massive amounts wrong, but it depends on, will they sit there and say we should have got 360 today? Are they going to say we didn't get enough runs, or are they going to say our bowling wasn't good enough? And honestly, I think that England would chase that with Jasprit Bumrah and Jadeja in that side as well. I'm not saying that they would do it as often, but England's batting lineup would knock a lot of sides for that today. So they've got to look at it and say, and it could cost them a World Cup because their strategy is, and it works better on Indian wickets because we're just going to have a look. We're going to set it up in the last 20 overs. We're going to have 8 wickets in hand and we're going to whack it everywhere like a T20. On pitches in England or Australia that do a little bit more, you can't just whack it for 20 overs because it's not as flat. All of a sudden, if they set that up and lose 3 or 4 wickets, like, you can't rely on Pandya and Pant to do it week in, week out because it's just not.
No,
It's
okay.
I think it's a flawed tactic.
Do you think England are more favoured as a team to win the World Cup than India in the T20 format? And considering an ODI format, would England be more favoured there? What's your thoughts on the two types?
Not in Indian conditions. If you played in every country in the world, like in a random environment, England are better side, I think, in white ball cricket with full strength. In Indian conditions, India are probably favourites.
But when you say white ball cricket, are you saying T20 or ODI?
Both. I think that they're both the best two by miles. And the problem with the 2020 cricket, it's shorter, it's quicker, there's a lot higher variance. So all it takes is Chris Gale to face 10 overs and he'll beat anyone in the world. All it takes is, whereas 50 overs is longer, so the better sides tend to shine through because it's harder for someone to have such a big influence on a game that in a 2020 you can, for example. So these two are by far the best in white ball.
Okay, I'm not saying these two are not by far the best. They certainly are by far the best, these two sides. What about that one side? Who was the best ODI and best T20?
Well, I said in India, India better. In random.
I'm talking. I don't want to know whether it is. I know
that's a key. That's a key question.
You still have to make it.
I'm going to say both sides full strength. Both sides full strength. I think England
In both formats.
Yeah, I think England are the best white ball team in the world. Yeah.
It's amazing because you have to have some merit in what you're saying. Absolutely, because we've just witnessed the 3-2 series between them in the T20 and now 1-1 in the ODI in Indian conditions, which is, and I'm sure if we'd spoken at the beginning of the series, you probably wouldn't have expected it to be this close overall. You would have expected somewhat a higher India advantage because it's home. England have done particularly well to have brought it to this position. Let's be honest.
At the start of the series, we all sat here and said we think it would be 2-1 either way.
No,
so
I'm
we must have thought it'd be close.
I'm talking generally, though.
Yeah.
The reality is they've done better than they should really have expected to do under Indian conditions. What I'm saying, in the short form, the short version of the match, certainly in the Test version, we've already spoken about that. You said very clearly that you surprised if England would have won any matches because of the sheer weight of conditions against them.
If you look at statistics tell you how tough it is to go and win abroad.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And if you're talking about,
is that in all forms or just Test? Would that be the same in white ball cricket as well?
Generally, yeah, it will stack up. And India are number 2 in the world. So you would expect India to be winning in their own backyard, both series. So the fact that England have pushed them hard, and who knows what the outcome of the next game is going to be, I think England will be sitting there saying, fantastic, we've learned a lot. We know conditions. We know we need probably a little bit more on the bench from a bowling point of view for us in case we get injuries. But they'll be pretty confident even if they lose the next game.
Well, Cement 006 is making a good point. First thing, they need to stop making 3 teams. I know the conditions have meant because of COVID and the like they've had to do such things and the way that they go through injuries in Australia. But I think that's true. I mean, it's great.
I have a problem with this because when India win, it's brilliant. We got Sky and we got Kishan in. We've unearthed a new bowler. We've unearthed this. It's great to give these guys a game. And when they lose, it's why are we picking these guys? Why aren't we picking our strongest side? So, I mean, do you want your cake?
Hang on. It's like, I personally have always said you pick your strongest side.
But then again, but you've also said it's great that Sky's playing. I'd be playing Sky.
Actually, no. I've accepted that. No, I personally have said, and I've made it really clear, Chris, and don't change what I've said. I have said very clearly that the best side should play every single match in every single format, regardless. I've made that adamant. I was very adamant about that. And Adam Hollyoak even agreed with that as well. I've always said that. That's always been my old-fashioned traditional way of picking a side. You pick your best side. Not rest, not this, not that. So the fact that the young blokes come through, I applaud that because they've been given an opportunity, certainly. But I would always have picked the best team over any young bloke coming through.
But the thing is, what's India's best side at the moment, given who they've got? I've no idea.
Well,
they've stuck with their best side, and he's come good. KL Rahul was shown that form is temporary, class is permanent. They've stuck with him when a lot of people.
Rahul and Dhawan, when they started the T20 series, as you said, were in the best IPL form statistically than anyone else.
Dhawan played one game. He faced Mark Wood and he got him out. He played one game. How can you judge a bloke's form? Because he got out in one 2020 game.
I'm no way around. I just said to you that you said, and I really look at that quite seriously, that Dhawan and Rahul are the best opening partnership, let's say, in T20, based on the form they've produced. And even though Rahul had a lean period and he got dropped in that last match, he's still probably the one they're going to have to consider as selecting.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. As long as the IPL form's true to form yet again, they're the two that they're likely to pick. Probably now more so Dhawan in the ODI format rather than T20. I think that's certainly the consideration that Dhawan will open with, say, Rohit Sharma, and Rahul will be in the side. But for T20, it's probably going to be an interesting way that they go about the use of Dhawan. They're probably going to look for Rohit Sharma with someone else to open the batting, and that's the question that they've got. But I come back to one of the people who said, the changing of the teams. That is the key to India's success. They need to settle on a side that they are going to back. And the last match will be interesting to see who they do select.
The thing is, they know what their best side is, but they're just playing around with the rest while those guys are injured or not available to see, who they've unearthed at the moment. Shardul Thakur probably has come in as a decent squad bowler. I'm not convinced at all, but he seems to have a golden arm. He did it in the one-day series in a game where England were cruising. He did it in the first one day, and England just comes on and has a knack of taking 2 wickets in an over or breaking partnership. So, I think India probably know what their best side is. It's just working out. The problem with Dhawan and why they're keeping him about, if you look at his record in ICC tournaments, it's staggering. They made a point of it today on the telly. Dhawan in World Cups is phenomenal. And so you pick, what do you do when you pick in for tournaments, football, rugby, cricket? You pick experience or you pick on form. And if you're picking experience, Shikhar Dhawan has to be one in that squad for both white ball games because his record is ridiculous.
Okay, I grant that. Hardik Pandya, just back to him for a moment. The last match of the T20 series, the 5th match, he stood out with the bat and ball and really gave a good account for himself. Is he going to be picked moving forward if his bowling's not up to scratch, if his fitness for bowling is not, is he going to be picked?
Certainly messes up the balance of your team because you've got to go in with, you've got to have 6 bowlers really now in this game. It leaves India very thin with 5 bowlers. So for me, he has to bowl. He has to be fit to bowl, otherwise, can't play.
Are India happy going in with 5 bowlers with Yadav and Krunal? Are they happy that they have to bowl 20 overs at that England batting lineup on a flat wicket? And the answer is they must be terrified of it. Like, I thought in the first one day that Hardik was going to bowl, but because England blew up, he didn't have to. So he just let them bowl out, give the boys some overs. But today it was made perfectly clear that Hardik isn't quite there. And I don't think you can pick him as a batter only. I think he's good enough to be in that side as a batter. But in that current India makeup, he can't play as a batter. I think it's him or Pant if it's batters, if you're just picking a batter. So, yeah, they have to work it out.
Are we going to hear the truth about whether Hardik Pandya was injured and didn't bowl because of that?
He must have been injured. There's no way how he couldn't have been injured, because he would have bowled. In the 20th over, he would have bowled a couple of overs just to see if he'd take a wicket. There's no way that, as I said, 16 overs for 156, the 2 spinners bowled today. He would have bowled. So I think they said in an interview afterwards that he was nursing. I think Kohli or Sharma said, I think Kohli said that they're managing his fitness. So I think if you watch back Kohli's interview, he definitely spoke about it.
So does that imply that he went into this match with an injury?
Well, I assume that they would have known about it. I assume
it's the same injury, isn't it? The one that he's been coming back from during the Test series. So I think the word managing tells you your answer.
Isn't that a bit of a shock, though? That I'm not trying to isolate this game for a moment, okay? Because he played well in the T20. So they're literally, it's dicey every time he plays. Correct? He can, despite being injured, play a game like he did in the 5th T20 and really was close to man of the match in that game.
I think that Hardik needs to be used like Ben Stokes. Like, he's there to bowl if you need him as a luxury. Some days he'll bowl 10 overs, some days he'll win you a game, but he's not your 5th bowler. He's not your 4th seamer in a Test match. He's your chuck the ball because of his fitness and because of his impact. If he's there and he can do a job, brilliant. You don't want to rely on him to do it week in, week out. And I don't think England look at Ben Stokes. I think that they see Ben Stokes as if Anderson, Broad and Archer do the job in the Test match, Stokes won't be bowling. But if we need him when they're 200 for 1 to come on and change a game, he's there if we need him to.
So, okay, can I just surmise what you've just said? That Ben Stokes carries injuries in the matches.
I think that he's not always 100% fit, but what cricketer is. And
I think the amount of cricket they play nowadays,
the
amount of cricket they play, it's very hard to get someone back fully fit unless there's a big break like we had with COVID. You've got a chance. But if they then come back and get India in particular, geez, their schedule's ridiculous over a calendar year. So yeah, it's tough. So you're actually trying to manage players through games so that it wouldn't surprise me if he bowls in the next game because it's a big game. So they probably rested him today, knowing that win or lose is still in the series. Gives him a few extra days to get strong, and then bang, he'll bowl a few overs in the last one.
But I also think it gives him a problem in the Test side because he's going to bowl in the IPL. He's going to play the whole IPL. Whether he bowls much depends on what Mumbai is shaping up like. But for India's Test side coming to England, he is huge. Like, if he's bowling and he's fit, that is the balance. I think he's as important a cog in that India. If he's not fit to bowl, then you can't play him because he's not good enough as a batter to bat at 6 in a Test match or at 5 as a batter. So his Test career, especially in England, because in India he won't play because they'll just pick 4 spinners and a couple of seamers and they'll pick a better. For him to play in England, he has to be bowling because there's better batters. And if he's batting at 6 and not bowling in England, we aren't going to be that worried about that. We're going to be worried if it's Rahane coming in or a specialist batter. So for that Indian Test side to be perfectly balanced, he has to be bowling. Otherwise, I don't think he gets on the side.
Well, there's every chance he'll play in that match because of the very fact it's only one match.
Yeah, but then even more important, he has to bowl. Like, if he doesn't play, you have to pick. You can't pick 3. They're not going to pick 2 spinners in England. I'd be amazed if Ashwin and Jadeja play. So if he doesn't play, you've either got to pick a 4 out-and-out seamers, which leaves basically Pant at 7 or 6 and Ashwin at 7 or 8. And Ravi Ashwin isn't a number 7 or an 8 in England. He's probably number 9. So he offers that perfect balance at 7 that they would want to have. And if, as we said about Gilchrist, Wilco was touching on with the keeping role, if Hardik comes out of that as the batter bowler, it puts a massive lopsided, difficult decision on India. Do they go with 7 batters or 5 bowlers? And it kind of really makes it a really weird mix of a side if he's not there bowling.
I do like Sanket Jay's comment here. He says, do all of you have short-term memory? India were 2-1 behind in the T20 series, but still won the T20 series 3-2. It's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Yeah, but he's obviously not listening, because we said India in that home patch should be winning. They are favourites because they are number 2 in the world. So the fact that they were 2-1 down questions how good a team they are.
Dear Ajar, Kohli said during post-match Hardik will play every test in England as a rounder. Of course he's going to say that because he understands how important it is. What our point is, if you're listening, dear Raj, is Hardik's got a back injury. Fast bowlers and back injuries is not good. They don't just get better and they come back. Our point is if Hardik isn't fit to bowl or isn't 100% fit, he can't play in England because he has to be bowling. And you don't want your bowlers
are tough. If
you
they
don't
go
want it.
It's tough.
You don't want your 5th bowler breaking down in England because if it's not going, Bumrah's had a few injuries. Bhuvi, India have got unbelievable depth in their seamers, but Ishant Sharma's had injuries. They're not historically fit young bowlers either. They do have some injuries, as all fast bowlers do. So they need to make sure he's fit. And I think the biggest disappointment with Kohli's captaincy today with the bowling was that England threatened to do this in the first game. There's not like England have just plucked that out of the abyss. England did it and collapsed in the first game. England have threatened to do it, and it just looked like Kohli was happy to sit back and say, "Oh wow, we didn't realise England were going to bat like this," and it looked like they were just out of ideas today. So they've got some thinking on how to counteract that in the third game.
Yeah,
every time.
Honestly, I think India can beat England in England, if I'm honest, because their bowling attack is as good as England's, if not better in some areas. The 2 top orders have shown that they're susceptible against the swinging or spinning ball. So for me, India have got a really good chance of winning in England.
The best chance they've had in a while. I think they won in 2011. That was a 2-match or 3-match, wasn't it? And the Zahir Khan took a load of wickets. Why? Because he pitched it up and he swung it. It's no. We've said before that the Test series in England comes down to who bats better, because both bowling attacks will take stacks of wickets, and you're not going to see. The problem is, I don't think England will put out green seamers. It's not historically what England do. They might put out depending on the weather, but it's if it swings. England very rarely put out green seaming wickets. They put out good flat wickets, and if it swings around because of weather conditions, then that's different. But yeah, India's bowling attack's brilliant, and the only reason I think England will do better is that I think they'll just play it better than India will. But I won't make any bones that, as a fan, I'm not worried, but I'm certainly sat here thinking there could be an upset here. India are more than capable of turning it on this summer for sure.
It is so funny. The viewership during this conversation goes up when you guys are quite frank about Virat Kohli or Hardik Pandya, and that's like, the moment we turn the conversation elsewhere, the numbers go down. I don't know how.
To England.
So.
To England.
Yeah. It's intriguing. I don't know how that's the case, but there is something behind it. It's almost amusing to watch the conversation change. And how the old worm, they call it the worm, don't they? When you have a political speech and the people talk in certain ways, it goes in different directions. It's very intriguing. Okay. There's a lot of byproduct type conversations which go on in our chat room, which is always, they start to banter with each other, don't they? And it's quite interesting when that happens.
They were here for about an hour before. I think the first comment was at 4:00 or something. They've been talking here for about an hour before we even came online, Norman. So it's they obviously look forward to it.
I think it's amazing. It's a great thing to see. Cement 006. I'm liking when he talks. he provokes quite nicely, and he brings on new people. Amrish Siraj, Suman Awasi, they all came on board just recently. Ravi Singh's made some comments. Rushika Patel making good banter here. What's your stand up? Cement 006, I like what he says. Flat means good, dusty means bad.
What I mean by flat is I mean that they're good all-round cricket wickets, is what I would generally call a flat, decent wicket. You know, they're not, I made a bad 2-day pitches. They're pitches that go 4 days, 5 days and are a contest. You know, 350 plays 300 plays 250 plays chase. You know, I don't see Dusty being 100 all out, plays 150 all out, plays 40 all out, plays 100 for one. You know, that's not, I see English cricket wickets generally as, and look at the 4 test matches that we played over here against last time of India. They were all really close game. They flattered England because England just got the better of it. But
Sam Curran,
they were all 300 plays, 350 plays, 280. You know, they were all, and that's what a good test match 4.5, 5 day wicket is. And you know, it has to be a fair contest. And sometimes in some parts of the world, I won't say where, there certainly aren't fair contests out there.
Why don't you say?
No, it's the same anywhere. You could argue that the test match, the West Indies recently, wasn't a good wicket.
Elaborate on what you were not going to say then.
I'm just saying in some parts of the world, whether it's in Australia or whether it's in India or West Indies, because equally a flat wicket's bad. You know, you could argue that the West Indies Sri Lanka test match that's just finished wasn't a great wicket because the last day, 250 for 4. They batted 100 overs out in the last innings of a test match and lost 4 wickets. You know, is that too flat?
All I would say is that, you know, being a groundsman and preparing wickets is not as straightforward as we like to make it. You know, there are various things that can go against a groundsman, you know, in the lead up to a game. And you know, I'm sure every groundsman's got their recipes. Don't get me wrong. There's home advantage, always has been. You know, that's why the game, you know, is dominated by the home teams generally nowadays. But that's the art of the game, you know, to go around the world and see if you can conquer the challenges you're faced with. You know, one of the biggest achievements for Nasser Hussain and Duncan Fletcher was, you know, going to Pakistan and winning a test match in Pakistan. That was huge because that just hadn't happened for years and years by an English team. So for me, it's, you know.
But Wilkin, there's home advantage and then there's taking it to an extreme in some cases. Would you agree?
Well, what's extreme?
Well, just making it.
What's extreme?
The UAE. Those wickets are too flat, aren't they? A lot of the time, unless they get an absolute minefield out there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's down to conditions.
Yeah.
You know, it's the soil type. It's, you know, you can't get enough water into the pitches because it's so hot and humid there. You know, there are challenges. You know, what's flat in England is different to what's flat in Mumbai. You know, so you've just got to take the rough with the smooth and adapt accordingly. You know, we all want this level playing field, you know, DRS and everything. But for me, part of the game, you know, that's why I've lost interest in football, is because you take the rough with the smooth. You see how players react, you know, whereas when it's every decision is you know, technology, I think it's boring. I think as a watcher, it really gets boring. So, you know, I wasn't a walker. I used to nick them and stand there. And, you know, some days...
Did you coach that? Do you coach that, Simon? Oh, my God. That's going to be...
I'm the same as Walker.
Going into our finals package. Comments. That's a classic.
I'm a very honest person. You know, the umpires are there to make decisions.
Hang on. How can you be an honest person when you nick and don't walk? That's a contradiction in terms.
I mean, I'm honest about talking about it. You know,
right, I'm glad you clarified.
I'm the same as Wilco completely.
You know, the umpires are there to make decisions. Some you get away with, some you don't. It's like LBW decisions. You know, it's been proven now that there were times in the past you get hit on the pads. It was not out. Now you're given out on the front foot, LBW, for the same offence. Do
you want to hear my thoughts on nicking and not walking? I mean, that's where the comparisons of WG Grace kick in with me, because I obviously, when I was out, I wouldn't walk because they came here to see me bat, especially on the MCG and SCG. So they, even if I got out several times, they wanted me to bat.
We've seen you bat, Norman. We were all praying that you do walk. Trust me.
Beg your pardon.
I'm actually. Do you know I walked as a youngster? I was brought up to walk, playing club cricket.
I can imagine Ray's a walker. I imagine Ray would have been a walker.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And then I played county second 11 cricket, and my first game at the age of 15, I walked off, nicked off, and I got told very bluntly, if I ever did that again, I wouldn't get a game. So
Wow.
So by the team and the coaches involved, it was not done at county level. So the
best example of it, and I would walk if I was playing for the MCC on a Sunday or for a friendly I'd walk. League game, you couldn't pay me. But the best example was Adam Gilchrist, was renowned famously as a walker. If he nicked it under his arm, I think he played in the Test match where he big appeal, didn't walk, umpire gave him out anyway. So what's the point? Like, he was famous for being a walker, Adam Gilchrist, like almost too much. Nicked off or didn't hit it, umpire gave him out, and you think, what's the point? It's just one of those. And
well, here we go. Cement 006. Guys, what about 100 ball cricket and IPL franchises to join in England? Eyes on cricket with Norman. There you go. What's your thoughts?
There's been talk in the press about an Indian franchise buying out the IPL, and I actually wanted to bring it up, and I'm buying at 100. Do you think it's disappointing that the BCCI and the Indian Cricket Board basically ban their players playing in 2020 leagues around the world? Because I know it's never been talked about, but name an Indian player that's played in the Big Bash. Name an Indian player that's played in the domestic here. Name an Indian player that's played in the Caribbean. They don't want their boys going over and increasing the quality of other leagues, in my opinion.
Do you blame them? Do you blame them seriously? They've
dominated
the best form of T20 version in the world.
But do you not think it would? Do you not think it would suit their players? Do you not think it would suit Rohit Sharma or Kohli to go and play in England or a Big Bash?
Worried about that? Why would they be worried about that?
Yeah, I get it, but I'm just saying it's disappointing.
Domestic competition in the world, and they've got the biggest assets because obviously the Indian market watch. So that's why every national governing body want as many games against India as they can, because they know they're going to get the viewership. So they're not going to give away the biggest assets to someone else to try and compete with their brand, as it were.
Do you think that if England sat here in Australia, they sat down, say Ashley Giles sat down with Justin Langer, whoever it might be, and said, you know what, Justin, now we're both going to make a stand and we're not going to allow any Indians to come over and play in our county game or Sheffield Shield. We're not going to allow it. Do you think that do you think that they'd like that?
Chris?
I know it won't, but it's like one of those things, isn't it?
England also need to have Indian players playing in their county league.
I like it. I think it's a good thing, but at the same time, I guess from a cricket fan and someone who, I think the 100's a bit gimmicky, but I understand completely that it's there for the right reasons. I think it's just a big shame that Virat Kohli's not going to be there playing, and that's from a cricket fan only. The fact that because I reckon he would want to play. These guys would probably
also possible, Chris, with their international schedule.
But just generally, this year's different. But previous year or next year, there might be a slot to come over. Well, and it's just a shame that they're not going to.
I guarantee you, the Indian schedule until the end of 2023 is rammed. Okay, from an international point of view and IPL point of view, there is no for them to play. Unless they're a Test cricketer, someone like a Pujara, who you might get him to come over and play county championship cricket, or you might get one of the younger Test batters coming over or bowlers coming over. But other than that, you've got no chance.
But do you understand my point from a cricket lover's perspective? Wouldn't you love to see Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma in the Big Bash? Would that not be fantastic in front of 80,000 people? My point is that for the good of cricket, it's just a shame from a cricket purist perspective.
There aren't international Australians playing in the Big Bash because they're playing for their country.
Yeah. And let's face it, Rohit Sharma goes and plays in the Big Bash. It's not devaluing the IPL. You're not strengthening other competition. It's just another competition. Like the IPL is always going to be number one. Of course it should be because it's the best.
But Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma, mate, too much money playing in India.
You telling me that they would want
hundreds
to?
of millions of dollars.
You telling me that Rohit Sharma, if was offered to go and play in the Big Bash, he wouldn't say, "I'd quite like to do that"? Are you honestly telling me that he'd say no?
His career's over.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to what happened in Sri Lanka with Sangakkara and Mahela. They might consider doing that, to say that they played in the competition. So when they're done with Test cricket, that might free up the opportunity to go and play in these competitions.
And then they all think about money. Let's face it, they all want money.
Their governing body, because at the end of the day, the board still has to sign off, to allow them to play.
You won't see Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma coming to Australia when they finish their Tests and ODIs and T20 careers, looking to play leagues and drag it on, because they're worth too much money. They don't need.
It's the love of the game, isn't it? I don't think that they're all. I think that a lot of them want the money, but I think a lot of them just like playing. I honestly believe that
it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You won't see Virat Kohli playing.
That's because they're not allowed. That's the point we're making. It's not because they don't want to.
But
they haven't got the time. That's the bottom line. They've got so much international cricket that they're committed to. If they do get a window of opportunity, it's rest with their families.
Exactly.
No, I agree. I'm just saying it's just a shame from a purely cricket point of view that it's just.
You're forgetting one market, though. You're forgetting one market. You're talking about England and Australia being important markets, BBL, the 100, whatever it might be. The second most important market is where? Where is it? Sorry?
Well, India is the biggest market, isn't it?
Yeah. What's the second biggest market where we should be catering more for?
Well, America.
Exactly. It's the second biggest viewership in the world by far.
But that's because it's a lot of expats.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's expats. I'm talking about America.
IPL being in America at some stage.
Yeah, I think there's where we're seeing the future. When I think Tendulkar and Shane Warne had that series they played around America, they did try to cater for that, even though they're mostly legends. That's where the second highest market is, and in all fairness, they will probably deserve some sort of expansion of an IPL type league before too long, where a lot of the major players actually go there ahead of Australia and England.
Yes,
that's
agree.
going to be interesting when that happens.
Yeah. Oh no, America's a huge target for the game. There's no doubt about it. In the conversations I was involved in, 3 or 4 years ago, that was discussed. USA and China. We've got to try and get those countries playing cricket.
Well, China probably to a lesser extent, because it's going to be a long way before they get anywhere near it. But USA is there now. It's the second biggest audience. And whenever I talk to anyone outside of learned cricket knowledge people, they're shocked. In fact, a lot of people who know a lot about cricket are still shocked that America's the second biggest audience. Have you asked many people that? Have you gone, where's the second? In your greater group of friends and colleagues and cricket lovers, have you asked that question often? Just test it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you know your cricket, it's obviously it's a big expat and a lot of it's a massive market, isn't it?
Actually, I disagree with you, Chris. If you know your cricket, that they would know that. I reckon people who know your cricket do not know that.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. You only know, viewing figures. You'd only know if you go to governing body meetings or ICC meetings. And the facts is that 95% of cricket is watched by the Asian community, and that Asian community is all over the world. So, like you say, expats from those countries. So, for me, it's fantastic.
Oman's a classic. 3 out of the 4 million people that live in Oman are expats. No wonder they're now a powerhouse, and they're doing medicine like in there. In America, it's not just Asian or subcontinent people. It's West Indians, it's Australians, it's English, it's you name them. They're
tell you a team to keep an eye on. Okay, in the European championships is Germany. They're going to come through the ranks like Afghanistan did. They've got a hell of a lot of expats out there now, setting the game up. So
back in 1992, you're not going to believe this. Chris will not believe this. I played for a so-called side that was called Germany against Italy, and Italy was actually coached and almost captain coached by of all people, one of the Crows, Martin Crowe, was actually involved with Italy, and a place called Ispra. And I played for my side, and I had a bunch of English guys. It was an English pub called the Winchester Arms that was in Munich. And we would all go there, and we played on English Garden in Whites, and I represented the team back then. So there's another feather in my cap, Chris. Have you played in Munich in a major game, or played for another country and represented them against? No,
I haven't. No. It's a great story, isn't it? And that's brilliant.
What do you mean? Are you saying sorry? Is it not true?
No, I think it's great. No, story is not. I'm saying I think that's a fantastic. I would love to have said something like that. You know,
we toured to Italy. We played in a place called Ispra, and it was okay. It was mostly English and Australians and Indians and Pakistanis in the teams, but expats. But it was incredible. And then we had this one German guy who bowled. He was like Max Walker. He had this massive hooping, in-swinging ball. It was impossible to play. It was the most exciting thing. And to watch Germans seeing guys in whites on Munich, English Garten. So English Garden, the cricket pitch with whites was stupendous. Germans were going, who the hell, what are they doing? They were intrigued. I lived there for 5 years. I missed my cricket. And that was just my calling on that team. I ran to that pub and said, well, we're playing cricket. Where are you playing cricket? I want to play it. It was so much fun.
Good.
I was younger than you, Chris. So, yeah. There you go.
Good.
I digress. All right, back to look, this has been a great, and our numbers have grown throughout the session. People are obviously up still and watching, which is great. Chris looks like Jason Roy. No.
I wish I batted like him.
I was going to say you haven't seen that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hari Kuma, you didn't say Chris bats like Jason Roy. I get that. And Sai, and this is a comment that comes out a lot. I love it. Chris always cries for something. You've been. What's your comment?
Indian Memes Waller said between the 30th to 40th over, England scored 175 runs. Is this?
I was about to say that actually.
175 in 10. That's phenomenal.
Well, that was Ben Stokes, wasn't it? Primarily.
Yeah.
Sankit J, here's a question I was expecting to come up. Why is Chris silent on the third umpire decision? I think umpires' decisions are favouring England. That's why. I think that Stokes was probably out. I don't know what you guys think. It looked out and run out, but if they are being consistent of the decisions this series with Sharma's stumpings and Kohli's stumpings, then it was the right decision. And if I was umpire, I would sit here now, and I said on Twitter, I thought it was out. It was run out, and it was poor from Stokes. But given what their precedent they set with the Sharma's stumpings in the Test series and Kohli's in the one day, they're consistent. They can't give it out. And a few people saying that England are influencing the third umpire's decision. I mean, come on, look, take a day off. You know, that's not happening. You think Owen Morgan sat there looking through the window while the cameras are on? Like, they set a precedent with Rohit Sharma stumpings in the Test series that were out, and they just were consistent with it today.
Do you really, really deep down think if there's a lot of commentary from a country or a fan base, whatever, about a third umpire decision, that they don't influence the decision in the future a little bit? Do you really think that they?
Well, it shouldn't happen, and I don't know.
No, I'm not saying it should or shouldn't happen, but if there's a lot of backlash about a decision, the scrutineers of ICC will look at it even more closely, and if they concern themselves with anything, that it will not so much influence them to do something wrong, but it may influence them to go over that with the umpires and bring it to their attention.
I think the question should be, let's not say that people are influencing. Let's sit down and say why are there no Indian umpires on the elite panel, for example? Why? Let's not make excuses about influences or other things. Let's say, why aren't these umpires good enough? And I think that's what stood out. I think the on-field Menon in particular has been very good. There's been a theme through this series, Test match one days in 2020, that on-field has been pretty good, off-field has been pretty woeful, and that needs to be addressed. And I would say that let's not say that people are influencing. Let's say we need to educate to get these guys better.
Well, that's actually what I really meant. I wasn't saying influence in the word of being negative or biased. It's more about influence to get the standard higher or to improve the standard, if that's the way of influence.
The Indian umpires are on the elite panel.
None.
There must be. There must be some.
I don't think there is. I think I saw somewhere that there's not.
Well, there you go. Then that answers your question, doesn't it?
Someone says Menon is already on the panel, so they've got one. If that is the case, they've got one.
So answer education. Huh?
They don't decide an elite panel based on where they come from.
No. I get that, but generally there'd be one from most of the major countries, wouldn't there? You would expect it.
So they make a preference. If they haven't got an Indian person, they'll look for an Indian person first.
No, but you would hope that there's a decent umpire to that standard, that can umpire on the elite panel. Given the amount of cricket that's played in that country, you would hope so. But obviously, my challenge to it is how much support are those umpires getting? How much education process is in place to make them better? How much mentoring goes on, all that kind of stuff. So, that's where, your England and your Australias probably are ahead because they've got that support in place.
No, that's fair. That's a fair point. Diraj R says the best Test captain was Graham Smith, who won in every country. I tell you what, he was right up there, wasn't he?
He certainly was. Yep, and he had a good team. It wasn't up there like the Australian sides or the West Indies sides. So he did have to get the best, particularly out of his spin bowlers. He didn't have a great spin bowling attack. They've been known for their seamers. So
he did. He was very lucky that for probably most of his career, he had arguably the best seam bowler on the planet in the last 2 decades. He had Dale Steyn probably played his whole career nearly under Smith's and his pomp. He had obviously Callis going well. Smith's batting was probably unexpectedly good as well. I think that he came in they weren't totally sure how good he was going to be in Test cricket. So, but I think he's got to be right up there as one of the best captains, isn't he? I think for what he got out of, bearing in mind all the politics as well surrounding it. But as I said, a good captain's only as good as his team. AB de Villiers, Hashim Amla came through as well. So he had some pretty useful players, didn't he?
The two most heroic efforts from a captain, or not only a captain, but a player and captain, was Rick McCosker back in the days when he broke his jaw and he came into bat with his broken jaw. I'm not sure you remember that. And Graham Smith with his broken hand when he came into bat facing Mitchell Johnson.
Which England captain did it? Was it Cowdrey? Who came in with a broken arm? Was he captain at the time of England?
Hang on, okay, well, listen, not about England.
I was saying to add to the point.
Yeah, okay,
Brilliant. I'm sure Colin Cowdrey faced up to the West Indies holding the bat with one hand, didn't he, or something? Didn't he have a broken arm? Or I'm not sure if he was captain. Yeah, I mean, that's just, I guess, for what you look at as a captain is, and Wilco had played with captains, good ones, bad ones. I've played the same at all levels, and it's at all levels. It doesn't matter whether it's Village Green on a Saturday or Test cricket. Good captains are the blokes that you could quite happily, if we were going over the top in the trenches, they'd be the ones saying, "I'm going first, lads," not you go first. It's the guys that lead from the front and would do anything or take a bullet for the side if they had to.
Yep. Okay. So we're looking at the elite panelists: saying Marais Erasmus, Malcolm Goff, Nitin Menon, Paul Rifle, Richard Illingworth, Kettleborough, Tucker, Wilson, Joe Wilson. Yeah, it's predominantly non-Indian, isn't it? As far
Michael Goff has been one. Michael Goff has some kind of. You looked. They showed some stat last year, and he's come quite late, I think, to the panel. But I think in his Test career, he's got a 96% success rate on DRS reviews, and some of them are more like 50%, overturned. But his is like, I think, 50 decisions reviewed, and it's 48 right or something. It's crazy, and it's good to see that there are some quality umpires out there, because a lot of the time it's the first thing that is scrutinised, and rightly so. This day and age with technology and everything. So it's good to see that there are a good spread of umpires, and there are certainly some better ones than not. The problem is, I guess, with umpiring, similar to playing, it's a confidence thing. We got I think we had Joel Wilson in an Ashes Test here, and I think he made 6 wrong decisions in a row or something. They all got overturned. He made some absolute howlers, and you think, including the famous one where the Stokes LBW, but against Lyon. But it's a confidence thing. If you're sat there as an umpire thinking, gee, I've got no idea if I'm doing it right or if I'm in, it must be a really hard job.
Well, Australia has Paul Wilson and Paul Rifle. One played state, one played international level.
Is Oxenford not an Aussie?
Sorry?
Is Bruce Oxenford not an Aussie?
No, he's a Kiwi.
Yeah, Tucker's an Aussie. But I do believe players that become umpires are great examples of umpiring. They're often very good. Especially,
there's a few guys that Wilco will know from Kent who are coming through the ranks. Treadwell, Saggers. There's a few guys that I don't know if they'll want to go as far as the elite panel.
He's off the panel now. It's tough, It's really tough, especially if you've done it for a long time. Now, Richard Kettleborough for me was one of the most outstanding umpires for a long time, and just talking to him, his performance has dipped a little bit because he just says you're just so under the microscope nowadays that there's a lot going through your mind. So very conscious, not just of the game, but the commentators, the people watching the TV. It's a tough position to be in, and I know I couldn't do it. That is for sure.
Especially from a burnout point of view, like mentally, to be switched on. I mean, I know batting is strenuous, but to be switched on every single ball for 6 hours, and especially in the heat of like an India or Pakistan, it must.
And you're out your home country for two-thirds of the year. You're not with your families unless you fly them out. So.
They're getting paid very well, by the way, guys. They're getting paid.
Yeah, but still, I think it's been brilliant. One of the good things that, one of the best things that has come out of COVID is that Michael, they've been able to umpire in their home countries. For Tin Menon to umpire at Chennai or Ahmedabad in front of 60,000 people. That's something that they never get to do. English umpires never get to umpire at Lords, and it's the Aussies never get to umpire at the MCG, and it's just a shame. And I get why it is because of bias and everything, but that's got to be a bonus. Some of these guys at least can say, I umpired in India, I umpired in England.
Yeah, I mean, I keep coming back to the fact they've paid $250,000 at the elite level, if not $300,000, and all expenses paid. I tell you what, a lot of people would love that job and would take it very seriously and work their butt off to be in that position. So, although at one stage it was probably a task that many people would not have aspired to, and they've already struggled getting umpires.
Honestly, there are players who you would never even considered would have gone into umpiring because of the financial benefits of it. Mark Benson, who was international umpire at Kent, he was captain at Kent. You would never have thought he was going to be an umpire. But he took to it really, really well and was an international umpire for a long time. So
here you go. Here's a good stat from who just put it in. I just saw it. Milan, and Milan's come out with some good points. Since 2018, Michael Goff has a 93% success rate on decisions referred to the TV umpire. The next best is Umar Damasino with 79%. That's a massive, massive jump. And there'll be a minimum. So that's nearly 3 years of Test cricket. 93 to 78% is a. So
do you know what? Goffey gave up the game of cricket because of pressure. He did. He packed up as a player because of stress-related issues. And the fact that he's gone and into international umpiring and has got that record is full credit to him. That's impressive stuff.
In England, when I was there a couple of years ago, Kumar Damasena, who I know very well, he calls me hi boss. He loves calling me boss for some reason. I don't know what. He was with a gentleman, and he was a successful county player, very tall gentleman, South African background, who was one of the ICC elites. He managed let's describe
he oversaw the umpires. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, do you know who we're talking about?
Yeah, I do know who you're talking about. Yeah, he heads up the umpires for the ICC.
What's his name again?
I can't remember.
Yeah, he's got a South African background. He played county cricket. Quite a dominant fellow. Quite a
he's
Tyrone Henderson. No, I don't know.
No. He's back. He's Ian Gould. Ian Gould is one of his best mates. So they played together at Sussex, but I can't remember his name.
No, Well, I met him in Kumar Dhammasan. I've known him for a while, based on my Sri Lankan connections, and he calls me the boss, which is hilarious. And Ashley Giles were there, so we had a good chat with those guys over breakfast, and it was refreshing to hear their thoughts on what they're doing, how they're doing it, and even Richie Richardson, he's basically a match referee. He's enjoying himself silly. He loves that. I would never expect Richie Richardson to do that. I never expect him to be a match referee.
A lot of people, when we played league cricket, and I don't know what Wilco's views are, but I honestly couldn't think of anything I'd rather do less on a Saturday than umpire, just because I've umpired myself, and I'm not a particularly difficult bloke to umpire. I get competitive, and I don't sledge really, or I'm not. You get some blokes awful, but I sit there with my teammates, and I think, literally, I say it in the changing room. I say, fine to be competitive, lads, but without these blokes, we don't play, and they've given up. We've worked. I know the problem is I work hard all week and I look forward to playing cricket. And if I get a stinker first ball, that's ruined my week. But at the same time, I know that those guys aren't doing it on purpose. I guess it's just finding consistency. And I guess the one bad thing about DRS and stuff in club cricket is now umpires are giving more out potentially because of what they say.
Hang on, viewers. Just listen to me. Don't listen to this. Chris is lying through his bottom. He sledged me no end in a game that I played.
No, I did not. You fell flat on your face. I would have laughed at you for sure, but I would not have sledged.
How come you keep bringing it up?
You could always be a Sunday morning football referee. That's a nice job to have.
You see some of the videos that come out of kids football.
Every Sunday morning.
Kids football.
Unbelievable.
The reality is, Chris, I've been moving here. I'm going to get away from you guys. Stop listening. The fact is that there's no doubt about it that Chris sledges. He's a sore loser, and he did not have.
Doesn't walk either.
No chance.
And doesn't walk. Well, hang on.
Name someone that isn't a sore loser. Name someone that doesn't hate losing. I tell you what, most of the people viewing in this chat from India, they're pretty sore losers, and that's not a bad thing. That's not. I think that I'd have problems with someone who loses a game of cricket and isn't gutted afterwards. I think that I wouldn't want to be playing.
You get used to it after a period of time, can't you, Norm?
Yeah, exactly.
especially supporting the Rabbits.
That Australian one day side of yours, you'll get used to it.
Rabbitohs, bloody Rabbitohs.
The Rabbits.
If I could put my fist through this bloody screen, Rabbitohs. Rabbitohs, again, legendary. The whole of my fan base and India will be wearing Rabbitohs hats by the end of 2021 when they win the grand final for the 22nd time. 22nd time. You watch.
It's brilliant.
How many Seven Oaks wines game they win in 400 years of cricket? How many of them?
One a few.
How many? One in 400 years or 700 years of.
Slightly different. We're not called the Seven Oaks Vine, chickens or rabbits, or whatever you guys are called. So,
I reckon you're called. I reckon you're called chickens. That's what I reckon.
If you said to me this morning, I'm going to watch a game of sport, played the Rabbits versus the Roosters, I would laugh.
That's a sore point. I get really annoyed when people call my team Rabbits. I'll tell you now.
You must be breakfast time for you, Norm, isn't it? You must be a bit peckish.
Yeah, I think the hint is 6:30.
We'll have to go down that little coffee.
It's 7:15 here. Me and Wilco, it must be dinner time.
Absolutely.
Gin and tonic.
All right, guys, that's a nice segue to, I think, finishing this. We've got more viewers now than we had when we started, by the way. We're going gangbusters. Indians not going to sleep. Americans not going to sleep. Austrians not going to sleep. Canadians not going to sleep. Australians are waking up to this. All right. All right, guys.
Have a good weekend.
See you Sunday.
Just quickly, fledglings 2020, the 2020 fledglings, your fledglings cricket, the way that you're approaching things, David Gravening, Chris and I talked. We're amazed. You've done a great job. And I wish your podcast really well. I'll be the first to switch on to that.
We'll get you boys on.
I'll be well behaved.
All right.
There'll be no rabbit conversation.
I'll give you rabbit stew in a bloody minute. All right. And the reality is that the Rabbitohs won 26-16. Please tune into rabbitohs.com.au and you'll see all the results.
It's got like product placement now. Plugging the Rabbits.
See you,
Okay,
boys.
right.
You
All
too.
right,
guys,
thanks,
have a good
guys.
one.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Simon and Chris, we'll say goodbye to you both.
Bye.
See you, Chris. See you, Chris. All the best. All right. Thanks, guys. It's been fantastic yet again. The viewership's magnificent. It's late in your time zones, wherever you may be, or early, or whatever it might be. I really appreciate your viewership, your subscriptions and memberships. You're going to get plenty out of us. We're here for the IPL. We're here for the long haul. We're here every day. So this is Norman Koshnak from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Koshnak. Thanking you sincerely from the bottom of my heart. I love your commentary. Cricket View and Review panelists made some comments at the end there. Angel, you've got Cement 006, Munchie saying goodbye, Milan from Austria. You've been fantastic. Keep viewing, keep enjoying this. View, like, and share the post. As I said, subscribe. Memberships are worthwhile. I'm going to make sure of that. We've got a lot of great people that are going to help out. Pretty wasn't here today, but she's always a part of this as well. So stay tuned, guys. This is Norman Koshnak from Eyes on Cricket signing off today, waiting for the third ODI on Sunday. Should be a cracker. 1-1. Will India win? I think they will. All the best, guys.